For 23 years, Russia Day meant a grand concert on Red Square. This year, the square went dark. Ukraine struck oil refineries deep inside Russia, hit the bridge into Crimea, and forced Moscow's flagship celebration indoors. Putin's jewel is running low, and his capital was too afraid of the sky to celebrate. For 23 consecutive years, the 12th of June meant one thing in Moscow: a grand concert on Red Square, patriotic singers, crowds, and a Kremlin projecting confidence. This year, the square went dark. Ukraine made sure of it. In the hours before and during Russia Day, Ukrainian forces struck a petrochemical plant in Tolyatti on the Volga River, igniting a massive fire, then hit the Teneka oil refinery in Nizhnekamsk in Tatarstan, one of Russia's largest. Celebrations in Nizhnekamsk were cancelled. 5 airports imposed flight restrictions: Nizhnekamsk, Kazan, Samara, Saratov, and Volgograd. In Moscow, organizers quietly moved the flagship Red Square concert indoors to a smaller cultural center. The biggest acts did not make the journey. On June 12th, Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said 13 drones were intercepted on approach to the Russian capital. In the preceding days, 15 Ukrainian drones were intercepted near Moscow on June 11th. 31 more were shot down the day before that. The Kremlin cited a terrorist threat from Ukraine, and the Russian Defense Ministry blamed what it called the current operational situation. Moscow's Defense Ministry reported on June 12th that Russian air defense systems shot down 4 Flamingo cruise missiles, 74 guided aerial bombs, and 4,776 Ukrainian fixed-wing UAVs over the past week. The same logic had already stripped Russia's victory parade of its heavy military vehicles for the first time since 2007. Now, Red Square itself has gone quiet on the national holiday for the first time since 2003. Ukraine did not confine its strikes to Russian territory. Earlier, the 1st Separate Assault Regiment struck the Armyansk Bridge linking occupied Crimea to mainland Russia, hitting approximately 50 fuel and ammunition vehicles that had congregated there after a separate bridge was already damaged.
Because Chandhar Bridge was already damaged, the Russians concentrated a large number of trucks carrying military cargo, moving specifically through Armyansk. During the strike, we managed to hit the trucks carrying fuel and ammunition. There were about 50 vehicles, and some of them were destroyed.
The commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces declared that Ukraine will isolate Crimea in the near future, signaling Kyiv's ambition to cut off the occupied peninsula from Russian military support and undermine Moscow's grip on the region. The Washington-based Institute for the Study of War described the strategic logic at work. Long-range strikes are reducing Russia's production capacity, while shorter-range strikes are severing its ability to transport what it still manages to produce. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov acknowledged this week that Crimea is experiencing mass fuel shortages and said measures were being taken. Putin's jewel is running low, and on Russia Day, his capital was too afraid of the sky to celebrate. Ukraine has launched one of its most extensive long-range strike campaigns of the war, targeting military production facilities, oil infrastructure and logistics networks deep inside Russian territory and in occupied regions. As Kyiv expands the reach of its domestically produced weapons, the latest attacks underline a growing effort to disrupt Russia's war machine far beyond the front lines. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed on June 10th that Ukrainian-made FP-5 Flamingo missiles were used in overnight strikes against key Russian military and energy facilities. According to Zelensky, one of the primary targets was a military-industrial plant in the city of Cheboksary in Russia's Chuvash Republic, located more than 900 kilometers from the battlefield.
We continue to apply Ukrainian long-range sanctions against Russian military facilities and the oil industry. In particular, last night, Ukrainian FP-5 Flamingos struck a military plant in Cheboksary that supplies the occupier's army with components for drones and missiles. I thank the armed forces of Ukraine for their precision. The Kyiv oil refinery in the Samara region was also hit last night. The distance from the front line is more than 900 kilometers. I am grateful to the warriors of the Special Operations Forces, the Unmanned Systems Forces, and the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine.
The facility was later identified by Ukraine's General Staff as the VNIIR Progress Plant. Ukrainian officials say the company produces satellite navigation receivers and Kometa antenna systems used in Shahed-type drones, Kalibr cruise missiles, Iskander-M ballistic missiles, and guided aerial bombs. The plant has previously been targeted in earlier Ukrainian operations. Zelensky said the strike formed part of what he described as Ukraine's long-range sanctions campaign, aimed at reducing Russia's ability to manufacture weapons and sustain military operations. Russian authorities reported that an industrial facility in Cheboksary had been struck and said 3 people were injured. Ukraine's General Staff subsequently confirmed that a fire had broken out at the site. At the same time, Ukrainian forces targeted the Kyiv oil refinery in Russia's Samara region. The facility is one of Russia's significant fuel processing centers and is located hundreds of kilometers from the front line. Ukrainian military officials confirmed that the strike caused a fire at the refinery. According to Ukraine's General Staff, the refinery processes approximately 3.7 million tons of oil each year and supplies fuel products used by Russia's military-industrial sector and armed forces. Ukraine's security service also reported strikes against the Vtorovo and Lobkovo oil pumping stations in Russia's Vladimir region. The facilities play a role in supplying diesel fuel through the Moscow Ring oil product pipeline and support exports through Baltic Sea ports. The security service said local authorities acknowledged fires at infrastructure sites following the attacks. Satellite monitoring data reportedly detected thermal anomalies near both locations after the strikes. Beyond Russian territory, Ukraine continued targeting logistics infrastructure in occupied regions. Ukraine's unmanned systems forces announced that military facilities at the Russian-controlled Mariupol Sea Commercial Port had been struck in a coordinated operation involving the National Guard's 1st Corps Azov, the Security Service, and Special Operations Forces. According to Ukrainian officials, the port had been used by Russian forces for military supply operations and for transporting grain, coal, and metals to Russia. The attack reportedly damaged energy systems, repair facilities, administrative infrastructure, and logistics support installations. Ukrainian military officials said the strike left the port without electricity, significantly reducing its operational capacity. Ukraine's General Staff also reported damage to the steering and propulsion systems of the tanker West Horizon in the Black Sea. Kyiv classifies the vessel as part of Russia's so-called shadow fleet, which is used to transport Russian oil and petroleum products while circumventing international sanctions. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry said its air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 326 Ukrainian drones across 21 Russian regions, occupied Crimea and the Black Sea during the same overnight operation. Moscow described the attacks as one of the largest coordinated aerial assaults since the war began.